So, good morning. It's still morning. Yeah. So I have a talk that on the title is Be Who You Really Are and Embrace Your Passion and Your Dream. And when I thought about this talk, I was going to give it about something that happened in my life that marked me in a profound way. And that was that when I was younger, when I mean younger, I was about 19 months old. I was playing with something, a machine. It was a washing machine. And it had that ringer kind of mechanism at the top that was driven by these small motors, or gears, I would say. And since I was a very small child, I was fascinated by it, and I wanted to see what it was. So I climbed up on this table, and I stuck my hand or my thumb into the gearbox, and this is what happened. So I lost my thumb in this gearbox, and it transformed my life in certain ways. It made me think about life in certain ways. And I thought when I was writing the talk, that's what I was going to talk about. But as I thought about it a little more, I remembered that what had impacted me in my life was not this, but it was my parents. My mother was born in Philadelphia. She was an African American woman who worked as a seamstress. She would sew clothes for people. And she never finished high school because she dropped out of school because her mother got sick. So she had to go and take care of her mother. My father immigrated to the United States from Cuba. He was a merchant seaman. And he never got through school either. I don't know if he even finished his primary school education. But both of them had dreams for our family. They had dreams for me. They had dreams for the family. And that's really what I think marked my life most. So I want you to keep this in mind as I talk about these things, because I think you'll find that it ties everything together. So this is a poem by T.S. Eliot, and it says that we shall never cease in our exploration, and the end of all our wandering will be to arrive at the beginning and know the place for the first time. So I want to take you on this journey with me. So again, this is what I thought I was going to talk about. And I thought that those were the important things. But all of these things that I'm going to talk to you about today are really what shaped my identity. So because my mother and father had gone off, my father decided that he wanted us to go somewhere else to grow up. If you're in Philadelphia, this is 1940s. You would have been living in a segregated community. You would not have had access to housing or to good schooling. You would probably not be able to get a job, at least a very good job. And my father wanted none of that for his family. So he put us into a car. You can imagine this, from Philadelphia. We drove all the way down to Mexico. We went to a city called Guadalajara and established residence there. And that's where I grew up. And in Guadalajara, a number of things happened to me. First, I learned Spanish there. I went to high school and junior high school there. I met people that weren't like me. And the biggest thing that impacted my life was that I developed this concern for world beyond the United States. I was interested in what other people and their problems. And in particular, I was interested in the problems of social justice because there was such a big class difference in Mexico. Some very few rich people and a lot of people who were very poor. So that really kind of is the genesis of my identity, I think, in terms of what I thought my life might be about. Well, after that Mexico experience, I came back to the United States, and a couple things happened. Of course, I went to college, but while I was in college, because I already was out looking in terms of international, I decided that I would go abroad. I spent a year in France, so I was able to learn French. And by the time I was finished with all of these experiences and came back to the United States, I pretty much, this is the seamstress stuff, so we've done that. Yeah. So now I'm finished school. I've had some languages. I actually went on to get a doctoral degree. And I'm sitting in my office. So I've been doing all these things that are internationally oriented. But somehow it winds up that I'm sitting in an office somewhere and I'm teaching students things that are in a classroom. and they're not any fun to me to do anymore. It's like, you're going on this journey and you think you've arrived at your destination, and it doesn't fulfill you anymore. It doesn't satisfy you anymore. And that's where I was kind of stuck. I said, well, this is supposed to be the dream, and this is how it turned out, and there's a big difference between what I thought I was going to be doing and what I'm actually doing now. And I remembered that I was actually, to be honest with you, I was afraid that if I left what I was doing, what would I do? How would I survive? How would I continue on? And there were two ways. When I was making the decision for myself about what I was going to do with my life, there were two things I could have chosen. One of them was to be a teacher, right? And the other one, was to actually be out in the world and doing the work of transformation, actually talking to people and saying, what's going on in your life and how can I help you make it different? But those were two different roads. And I was too afraid to take the road of doing the actual work of transformation. So I sort of hid behind being a professor and writing papers and sitting in an office and giving lectures. I tried that for 20-some years, 25 years. So the part that, that's okay. You can go to the next one. Right. So again, I'm way ahead of my slides. Okay. So how does one, if you are stuck somewhere, if you're doing something that you don't want to do anymore, how do you get what it takes to make the change? How are you going to, even if you've done what you thought you wanted to do and it didn't turn out? It's not like you thought it would be. It's not fun anymore. How do you get out of that? Well, I remember, I recalled, if you would, something my mother taught me when I was very young. And she said, you can do anything if you have faith. You can do anything if you have faith. And I realized that my parents had been very faithful people. My mother, for example, I told she started out as a seamstress, making clothes, sewing pockets into clothes, and with dropped out of school. She went back to school. She became a teacher. She taught English as a second language. And at age 65, my mother got her master's degree in teaching English as a second language. So she had the faith to go ahead. I said, well, that's an example of faith. And then my father, who I told you had the 6th grade education or less, he was courageous enough to take the family to another country and have us grow up there so we could have a better life. And I said, well, my father had the courage to leave what he knew and to go to another place. So why can't I have the faith to try out something different? Well, that's when I woke up, because I was just determined that I didn't know what to do. And I woke up. And I said, I want to go after my dream. And so I did a couple things. But before I could do them, I still want to let you know I was deeply in fear, because I know a lot of us are like that. When it's time for a change, we're so stuck in the identity that we have that it's very difficult for us to think about changing. So I had the usual constraints. I had a mortgage. I had children in school. Some of you, maybe your parents talk to you about these things. I had bills to pay, and I was afraid of change because I thought I might fail. Right? And that's what woke me up, that you can do anything if you put your mind to it and if you have faith. And I gave you the example of what happened with my own parents' lives. Okay? So what did I do? I decided that if I was ever going to get back to this, what we're doing today, I have to do a couple of things. You have your faith, but you also have to put it into action. So I decided to enroll in a public speaking course. I took a course in personal development so I could distinguish a couple of things. For example, one of the things you learn about yourself is about being authentic and being a person of integrity and being responsible and being cause in the matter. All of those things come out of a course that I took in my own personal development, so that when I talk to someone, I actually can be here with you rather than in some fantasy land about what I think about, right? And the other thing I did was, once I had that under my belt, I applied to a seminar company, teaches nationwide, and they didn't pay me much. I think it was like, $200 to fly to New York and give a talk. But I did it because I wanted to start doing the work that my heart was calling me to do. So I did that for a while, and then the next thing I knew, I got a call from the State Department, and they said, well, wait a minute, you speak Spanish and you speak French and you speak Portuguese, maybe we can use you as a speaker. And I started going around the world speaking. I've been to Angola and Mozambique and Venezuela, as just speaking, just as the way we're talking about how one can have a better life for oneself. And then this came up. So I visited all the continents, I thought, but China was out of the picture. Someone mentioned that earlier in their presentation. It was like, China, right? But it was really clear to me that that was the missing. Sometimes you're doing something, you're developing yourself as a human being, and you see something that's missing, the opportunity presents itself, and you say, yes. So I came, and this is, I say this with some humility, but it really is a feeling of having completed a cycle in my life of preparing myself to do the work that I always wanted to do. Okay, so now I realize now that everything I learned, all of that stuff that went before, even going into the academic area rather than going directly into the human transformation and coaching and all of that kind of work, leadership work, which is what I do now. But everything that went before was preparation. That's where I got to learn something about society and mass communication and culture and languages and travel and all of that. And it all came together into what I am today, and which is, of course, a fusion of all of this, the exploration and that we make in our lives. So I wanted to leave you with an analogy for my life because I think it was DJ who said images speak louder than words, or one image is worth 10,000 words. I think that's what people say about imagery. So I wanted to leave you with this because I found this kind of explains very well what I've experienced in my life, this whole process. So I don't know if you know what a monarch butterfly is. You will see it in just a minute. It's a very beautiful butterfly, very cherished by many people, not just by botanists, but people who like butterflies. The butterfly is the symbol of freedom, the symbol of also the symbol of being able to carry pollen from one plant to another so that the whole process of life continues. But they don't start out being butterflies. They start out being something very insignificant. It's an egg that looks like this, and it's about 2 or 3 millimeters in length. You can't even see it. It's on the underside of a leaf. That's how this monarch butterfly starts out. It's very tiny. Look, this is using electron microscope to build this image. But that's how it starts. So it's not something beautiful. It's not something that you would say, oh, this is going to be wonderful. It's just some small seed, an idea, a passion that you might be carrying in your heart that wants to be born. But it doesn't. No one else can see it usually. Then we go to the next. It transforms itself into this caterpillar. So that little seed becomes, or an egg, I should say, becomes this. And this being's whole existence is just about eating and growing larger. It's feeding itself not just because it wants to grow larger, but it's feeding itself because it has a task to do. It's accumulating energy, if you would, or nutrients or substance, so that it can be ready for whatever is next. And I like to think that some of us, we sort of feed ourselves when we forget what it is we're feeding ourselves for. So that's why I wanted to also share this second image of the metamorphosis, the transformation of the egg as on its way to becoming the monarch butterfly. The third step of his life is that the DNA in it starts to tell it it's time for a change. So that little caterpillar encapsulates itself in a cocoon, we call it, or a chrysalis. Some people use that name for it. So inside of this, where nothing can be seen, where you're not even aware of it, where no one knows it's going on, something is magical is happening with you, and of course with the monarch butterfly. And I've seen this in time-lapse photography. This does not still. It doesn't just hang there from a leaf. That's where it's suspended from. But inside, you can see that there's some movement taking place. It's alive. You can't see what's going on, but some transformational process is taking place outside of our vision, outside of our understanding. And that's how life is for many of us as human beings. We don't know what's going on, but something magical is happening. And so it's developing, and it spends time there, moving from one state of being, from being a caterpillar, something that crawls along the ground and insignificant, and all it does is eat, to this. So we don't see this yet. So I said it was invisible and it was changing from one thing to another. I think we can get that. Yes. And this is what it becomes. So you went from something like an egg that you couldn't tell what it was going to be to something like this that is very beautiful. And the thing I always remember about this is that it's not only very beautiful and it's very different from what it started out to be, but also it doesn't have any legs anymore. Now it has wings and it can fly. So it's moved from this kind of existence to something here, which I find just fabulous as an image. So no matter what your start, no matter where you started, my parents started very humbly. You can find and fulfill the passion in your heart. You can also, in fact, what I want you to know is that right now, as you're sitting here, unbeknownst to you, you're already fulfilling that passion step by step as you get your education, as you learn new things, as you come to a TED Talk. You're getting the material you need to have your dream, if you would, become a reality. So trust that passion and let your dream become reality. I want to leave you with one more thing. I found this, I guess I should stand here. I found this was in my heart when I was preparing this talk for you. So it's a poem, actually part of a song, and I just took a fragment of it, and I want to share this to you because I think that people absorb not just reading and not just seeing images, but hearing, but also through a different kind of hearing, which is through song. So here it is. This is my quest to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to rush into hell for a heavenly cause. For I know if I only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest, and the world will be better for this. That one man, torn and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable stars. So, thank you very much. Embrace your dream. Embrace your dream and follow it. It'll take you wherever you want to go.
谢谢安琪教授，有请他签名。接下来的演讲环节交由两位嘉宾一起完成，我相信这在 TEDx 或者 TED 舞台上也是非常少见的。那这两位非常美丽的女士来自北京，接下来的时间就交给他们。邀请北京。